Greetings to all and welcome to Season 4, Episode 3 of Losing Our Marbles, a Talk for Two. Today, we're going to be meeting someone new, quote unquote. We've exchanged pleasantry stream to stream, but haven't really had the chance to talk face to face. So, looking forward to the conversation. Let's get him in here. Ladies and gentlemen, he's over here. It's Aireezgaming.
Hey, what's up?
Aireezgaming. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. Pleasure's mine.
Glad to have a new face on the stream as always. Things going well in your vicinity?
Absolutely. I can't complain. Happy and healthy. Just got my second
Always
COVID
good.
vaccination about a week ago.
Fantastic.
So
Getting it in
hopefully
there.
I don't have to worry about that,
Mm-hmm.
Doing good.
It's been a little tough with everything going on lately in the world, but
Yeah.
we're all doing our parts as best we can. Let's see how we want to start this off, because those are things we should do. Let's start on some common ground here.
All right.
Games in recreation. Do you even have time these days?
Well, I've got a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So while I have kids, they're at that age where they kind of they don't want to do stuff with us as much anymore.
Right.
They want to do their own thing. So that leaves me a little bit more time. But I mean, with all of how it is with the stream, you're always looking for ways to improve. And even when you're not live, you're doing stuff in the background to help work on that. And not a lot. I try to find maybe 4 or 5 hours a week that I can nestle in somewhere and play. But yeah, I can once in a while.
Yeah, for me, it's a weird juxtaposition because, sometimes I'll want to play a game just to enjoy it, and then I'll be enjoying it and I'll be like, I should be streaming this. And it's like...
Yeah, that's always in the back of your mind, too. It's like, should I be live? Should I,
Yeah, so
Am I missing an opportunity to hang out with people?
it's a tricky navigation for sure. Let me actually adjust my light. Look like I got some noise on the bottom corner here. Hold on. Oop. See if that's a little better. Oh, that's much better. Look at that. Way better. Should have done that years ago. Okay. So what games have you been looking at recently?
Lately, I've actually been catching up on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I was a big Assassin's Creed fan. I played almost all of them. And, yeah. I really enjoy those types of games. They let you just loose in a giant open world, and you can kind of go and do whatever you want. Some people hate having a million things to run around and collect, but I like the tediousness of it sometimes in the right game.
Right.
Aside from that, really looking forward to New World. I've got that pre-ordered. The Amazon MMO comes out 28th of this month. And then Forza Horizon 5 is coming out soon. I'm a big sim racer. I actually have a really nice sim racing rig that I'm very much looking forward to being able to stream and play and hang out and do. So those are the big ones that are on my radar right now.
Yeah, I'm eyeballing Diablo 4 right now myself.
I would like to have some more information about that. I really would. Yeah, I've been a big Diablo fan. Obviously, I'm an old school fan. I like 2 more than 3 immensely.
Agree.
Not a fan of how the skill building and they simplified it down. I liked having that nice big tree and everything. But hopefully we see a return to something like that in 4.
Well, they're also doing a remaster of 2 as well, so that might be fun to play around with.
Saw that. A couple buddies have nagged me to get it with them, but I don't know. I'm on the fence still. I want to see how much they improved it graphically in the end.
I mean, that's, for me, it's really just like getting my money's worth, because I don't mind, dropping $60 on a game, but then I'm going to play it for at least 60 hours.
Yeah, I try to make sure I'm going to get at least $1 per hour of entertainment value as well.
So that's always my thing. It's like, I would love to buy all these games and just play them, but it's not worth it. Just got to pick one and juice it.
Then you can get those sweet Steam sales later on down the road,
Sometimes.
And
Good. So. Cool. Let's see where else we're going with this. I guess going in that streaming vein, there's a lot of different ways to approach, engaging your stream and building an audience, choosing an audience, things like that. And topic that often comes up a lot is kind of censorship, I guess would be one word to put in that context. And the way I have it worded here is tempering versus censoring. So I'd be interested to hear your philosophy on where you draw the line between tempering and censoring.
See, I don't know. I can understand the side of the fence of trying to be very calm and collected and get your point across. Mm-hmm. I don't know, as reasonably as possible, but tempering is an interesting word because I have quite a temper. Sometimes it flares on my stream, and I don't know. I draw the line at I censor myself in the way that I'm not going to bring up religion. I'm not going to bring up politics. Mm-hmm. Generally, I won't say disparaging comments about a person. Not individually, I'm not going to attack them, but if I see something wrong with someone's behavior, I guess that's where I draw the line. Like everything beyond that for me is fair game, and I see like everybody creates their stream to have their platform to express themselves, right?
Right.
So sometimes I will rant at a game or about a developer or about changes, but I don't see that much differently from what the rest of the internet does. I'm just doing it verbally, and I don't know. I guess that's where I would say I draw the line. As long as I'm not, I might attack somebody's decision, but I won't attack their personal character.
Right.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. I might be like, well, that was a dumb thing to do and I don't agree with it, but it doesn't necessarily make them a bad person that I don't like.
Yeah, I think I really try to shy away from censoring personally myself. I think there can be harm done not talking about things personally. I can understand there being a time and place for it, in which case people, depending on how they want to conduct their streams, have it wanting to not be the place where certain things are discussed, which is perfectly fair in game. But if you go into the big ones, since you kind of touched on them a little bit when we talk about like religion, politics, money, stuff like that. I find that sometimes a disservice that if the default is to be unwilling to talk about those things in common socialization, then it only gets talked about at pivotal moments. And that's when you have a lot to lose and a lot of emotions and a lot of time-sensitive events occurring. And I feel like that makes it much harder and much more divisive. Whereas if it's just something that's talked about casually most of the time, then there's a comfort and familiarity with it. And while differences that have always existed might be hardened more in those pivotal moments, there's at least a framework already in place, a habituation, if you will, that people can fall into and get into, and possibly, it probably won't be much better, but possibly be a bit more productive than it currently is.
I agree. It would be nice to be able to bring those topics up, and I'd be more than willing to have discussions like that. Mm-hmm. My fear is in the way that we've all heard horror stories of streamers, getting their channels shut down because they were talking about those topics, and it's not that I'm afraid to talk about them. It's just I put a lot of work into my stream. I would hate for somebody to get offended in my chat, and then they're smashing the report button, like, oh, this guy was bashing on this religion or something, just taking something I'm saying, and then next thing I know, I have no channel. So that fear's always in the back of my mind. The internet's a crazy place, but I would love to be able to have those kinds of discussions on those topics if everybody could stay rational and we could all stay calm.
There are sub streams I've seen on Twitch that do try to tackle them in a more like open forum, public debate style.
Yeah.
And it does have that tendency to devolve into like Facebook comment thread, where it's usually the streamer who's bringing up all the data and all the verified sources and everything to prove point one at a time, and the contrary is, you know, just refuting and ignoring the data presented. It's just like, well, clearly this is not getting anywhere. But I do like that they do try in some of those situations.
Yeah.
So good stuff like that. But yeah, but as far as like tempering then, so let's say someone comes into your channel and is pushing towards a divisive topic. What would your approach be to fielding that?
I normally try to steer the conversation somewhere else. Somebody else that's chatting, talk about something else in chat. I try to grab that and latch on to it. You know, like, let's just change the topic. Or, you know, if they're really, really, really pushing, I will try to give an answer. Like, if they're asking me about religion or something, in as non-offensive manner as I can, you know, like,
right.
I will give my honest answer, but be sure to put out to say, like, I respect whatever you believe, you know. So I try to cover everybody's personal feelings on the subject, and then get my opinion out there as cautiously and as definingly as I can, so I don't have to answer any more questions.
Right.
If they were to keep going, I'd be like, let's, talk about something else. But that very rarely happens.
That's good.
People bring up politics or religion or anything
yeah.
like that. Most people know that someone's going to flare up in chat. Someone's going to get offended. It's too easy. Nobody agrees about anything anymore. So,
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but something that does require a little bit of attention, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I have to say I'm pretty much the same. I go on the attack a bit more often, especially when it comes to trolling or stuff like that. Because most of the time it's not even so much the fact that they're trolling; it's the laziness of the trolling. Like, I would actually enjoy a clever troll, right? Like, I would enjoy that moment. It's the laziness that like sends me off. So like, I'll attack people. Like, really, that's all you got? Like, come on, you can't do better. And then like, I'll one up them, and like, just be like, 2 seconds of thought I put into it to do a better job than you did, right? Kind of a thing. So I do have that tendency to kind of be a bit more protective, I guess, of the content. But overall, the end goal is that same concept of everyone's voice gets heard and it lands where it lands, and then we move on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Good stuff. I like it. Let's just we're gonna shift gears into left field here. Construction. You've spent some time building some things, I hear.
I have.
Interesting. I've also spent some time building some things. Probably not in the capacity you have, but to some extent. What is the what's the fascination? What's the interest? What's the catch for you when it comes to building?
I assume you're talking about computers. Yeah. I don't know. I just love it. I love putting everything together and making it just look clean, and that feeling when you fire it up. I have ADHD, like, out the ass. So everything has to be like really perfect. And I like bringing the order to the madness that is just a bunch of parts in boxes all over the place. And then, you're halfway through the build and it looks like a tornado's come through the room because there's packaging all over the place. And then in the end, you just have this beautiful working machine that you can appreciate, that you put your effort into. It's like, I don't know, I guess the feeling a carpenter might get when he stands back at a finished house and it's look at what I've done. And so I do it for that feeling, and the fact that I get roped into it a lot by family and friends who don't want to deal with it. So that's just another one that gets done.
Once it's known, it's hard to escape. That's for
sure. Just have Justin do it. He'll build it, So.
Is there any particular connector or piece that really is just a fascination? Like, for me, I love memory. I love how it just snaps in. I love the fact that like you can see all the cells are built in right to there, right? Like I really like the memory aspect of it and how that all works out with the motherboard and everything. Anything?
Yeah, for me, it's the processor. There's a little bit of, you get a little rush when you pick up a $500 processor in your hands and you're just getting ready to seat it. Like there's a little thrill that goes through you, like don't drop it, don't drop it, you know. And then just knowing that it's just all that power in there, that technology, and just such. Every time I take one out, I'm just like, holy cow, this.
I don't understand it. I just processors go over my head. Like I've tried to learn, like I know basic circuitry, I know algorithmic process, I know all that, and then just like, how do you go from that to the processor we have today? Like I can't make the leap. It's just,
for me, I go down rabbit holes, like I'll start researching. Like last week I was researching the 12th gen Intels that are about to drop, I think October. And then you just go down the rabbit hole, like, oh, well, what's their bandwidth? What's their throughput? Oh, bandwidth is this, and this, and you accumulate all this useless information in your brain. I guess not useless. You do use it a lot, but yeah, it just piles up, and I don't know. I absolutely love building PCs. Love it.
Yeah, it's definitely. I can definitely understand your like therapeutic approach to it, where like the taking something that's not right and setting it right kind of mentality, and then when it's all done, it all kind of comes together for you. Yeah, I had always thought of doing like a dissected computer, and I guess I was both ahead and behind the game on that because it was like right out of college, so probably about 13 years ago or so. I always wanted to do just like no case, no mounting, no nothing, just like each piece and then like a straight wire to the next piece. So it would be like mapped out in straight lines, like a subway system or something.
And you could do builds like that.
As I was saying, now on YouTube, like those are like really popular videos. Like, gosh, they've done it.
Yep.
Could have had 1 million views. Right.
I think I first got into it just because it was so much cheaper. It used to be. Nowadays, it's still. I don't know. You know. If you can get a graphics card at retail, maybe, but it used to be way cheaper. You'd save $300-400 by doing it yourself. Yeah. So that was a big incentive. To make me do it in the first place.
Now the doing it yourself is more making sure everything works together properly, because there are good like gaming packages and video editing packages out there, but sometimes you got your graphics card running an AMD and the motherboard running an Intel, which is not a problem. But if the frequencies are different, if they're communicating different, like it's a small bottleneck. It's not a lot. It's not noticeable for most people.
Yeah.
But it's that thing. It's like, well, if I built it, I would make sure everyone's speaking the same language, running at the same megahertz,
My problem with the pre-builts is that you find oftentimes they like to skimp in one or two departments. So you'll either get like really nice components, but you'll have a subpar power supply or like a subpar motherboard, and those are very important components that especially your motherboard. I've seen it a lot. I've seen it a lot because this PC has amazing specs, but you're running like a gigabyte entry level $50 motherboard with all.
They do whatever they need to do to get the numbers to sell
to look good,
and then wherever the numbers aren't concerned, that's where they cut down on the price.
Yeah.
So it's crazy stuff. I'm hoping to get the fourth tier flagship graphics card. They're only like 300 right now, so I'm looking into upgrading to get one. And I also need a new camera.
The 3060 or 3060 Ti.
Yeah, Ti.
I was lucky. I fought the bots. I missed out on the 3080. I missed out on the 3070, but I got a 3060 Ti at launch. I didn't realize how lucky I was at the time. But I do now. Now.
So that's what I'm hoping for right now.
I hope you get it.
360 Ti at some point. So that and a new camera.
I will send you some tips later on Discord. I've got a few sites that might help you get one a little easier. So that's how a couple buddies got one.
Good to know. Good to know.
I don't want to put that out there. That's classified information.
I guess that kind of brings us to my next question I had in line, which is this the jack of all trades mentality, which I'm a big fan of, if not victim of, in today's society. Don't know if you watched the one episode where I got into it a little. This was probably season 2, but kind of extrapolating on this concept of generalists versus specialists, which at our early stages of societal development were very important. So, 7,000 years ago and earlier. And then probably as late as 1,000 years ago. There would be, you see that division now of people where there are people who can do a little bit of everything, and there are other people that are hyper specialized into one category. And 7,000 years ago, there may have been only 12 to 15 tasks that the society needed upkept to function properly. You have the collection of water, the collection of food, cooking, medicine, clothing, construction. There are only so many things to do. And so a generalist who could do 6 of those things really well would have done well. And then the specialists would also have done well, because if they were able to either do something so well that other people didn't need to worry about it, or do it so well that it actually created surplus so that the whole society could benefit from the surplus of it. So there was a need for both in earlier forms of society. And as society continues to increase in complexity, that generalist starts to shift more internal, and the specialist tends to shift more external. So most jobs are going to require more specialization. And you see the biggest problem with that, or at least example of that, with like college education and employment, is a lot of tech industries want you to be educated generally in certain softwares and things like that, but in the end, they have to teach you everything from the beginning when you get the job, because they do it a special way. They have a special version of that software, whatever. And especially going into science, if you aren't hyper specialized as a scientist, you don't have a job. Like, if you're not worrying about one regional population of one species of one genus for 40 years, like, what are you doing? Right? So the generalist kind of gets pushed inward to society, where things like politics or other leadership roles, even educational roles, could work better as a generalist. But by and large, it does seem like the generalist has less and less places in modern society than the specialist does. Not that this is actually a question yet.
Yeah.
So it's just
I'm kind of waiting for it. I'm like, all right, where is it?
I was like, he's waiting for a question and it's not coming. No. So this jack of all trades mentality in entertainment does seem to have good roots. Even vaudeville, that's what that was. It was how many different things could a show host do to be the glue between the specialist acts. And that kind of translates into late night, where you have, Jimmy Fallon, who can sing and act and do impressions and do comedy. Yeah. It's like, he's not the best at any of them, but he does a good enough job of each of them.
Yeah.
So as an entertainer or in your general life, where do you see those lines of generalist versus specialist, and what fits you better?
Wow. That's an interesting question. I don't know. I would say I've become a generalist by being a specialist a lot. Does that make sense? Like I've said, I've worn a lot of hats. I've done a lot of different jobs, and when I do them, I tend to dive in 110%. I want to become a master of it as fast as possible. I come in with a teach me everything you can mentality, and when you have nothing left to teach me, get out of the way, show me who taught you, and I just kind of work up the chain and absorb as much knowledge as I can. And so I'd say whatever given thing I'm into in my lifestyle at the moment, I go 110%. So like right now, I'm going absolutely nuts on physical fitness. I started working out about 2 months ago, but I dove in and now I'm going 2.5, 3 hours a day. I've completely changed every other aspect of my life to suit that one thing because that is my goal. So I don't know. I think that my character is very, when I get attached to an idea, I'm driven. I've really latched on and or a goal, any goal, job, whatever it be. So I would say specialist. I would say specialist. And then I just happen to know how to do a lot of other things because I'm 35. I'm old now. I've lived a lot of life. So, you accumulate skills.
Yes.
So
it's good to retain them. Yeah, I think I kind of have the opposite problem is that I'm afraid to specialize because I'll have to, like you said, like all your time and energy goes into it. And it's like, but then I still want to be able to do this. I still want to be able to, like, I have that's the problem I have is I have a problem of even if it's temporary, just letting go of something so that I can focus 100% on a single aspect and then go through on that. So that's something I have a little trouble navigating.
I wish that I could do that sometimes. Sometimes I get too focused on a certain thing and it can be harmful to other aspects because you realize I'm not putting enough attention where it might need to be in other areas of my life because I'm just so focused on this one thing. Like when I started streaming, I'm setting up a stream and learning everything for the first time is an incredible amount of time that's devoted to something like that. And it consumed me for a long time. I had to learn a proper stream life balance. And, so that was very, very difficult for me being such a single-minded, centered on one thing person.
Yeah, I kind of have a canary in the coal mine because my meditation is playing piano.
Oh.
So there'll always be that day where I wake up like, I haven't played piano in 2 weeks. Something's wrong. I need let me reevaluate my time schedule here. Make sure I'm keeping all my priorities. Like, I haven't vacuumed in 2 weeks. I should probably do that. All these things I've kept saying, tomorrow, haven't been done. I should do all of those things. There's that step back and there's a whole house, not just one room here. I gotta move around a little bit.
Yeah, I understand that.
So that's good. Would you go so far as call it a hyperfixation, like in a problematic sense, or is it more just a driven sense?
It can be. Yeah, it can be. I had some issues with it when I was younger as well. Like I went and saw a specialist and they were like, you straight up have ADHD and obsessive compulsive disorder, buddy. And it's tamed down a lot since I was a kid and going through all those, growth hormones and freaking out all the time. But I do find myself to have an issue with it sometimes.
Gotcha.
I have to be very, very, very mindful. But my wife is always quick to let me know when I am being very fixated
network.
On something.
The support network is very essential for that.
In a good way.
Exactly. And so I think I've been pretty lucky genetically. There's definitely OCD that runs in my mom's side of the family, but I think my great grandmother was the last one to fully have it, probably just one recessive gene, not both. And then my dad's side is depression, which he has, but I'm probably again just one half recessive gene, not both. So I'll have those proclivities toward OCD and depressive moments. Actually, been kind of rough lately, to be honest. but it's not severe enough that I can't self-manage. So I consider myself pretty lucky in that regard. But it's a weird situation to go alone. So going back to you having support network and a spouse that's willing to call you out when it happens, is there's a difference between being aware of it and recognizing it. And I'm going to try to extrapolate on that a little bit more, in that I don't know if it's a self-destructive quality or just a fear of the inconveniencing others kind of situation. But quite often it can be a situation where you know you're either going into a situation or you are in a situation that is you giving in to those OCDs, those depressions, those ADHDs, whatever. And you're like, but I'm aware of it, so it's okay for a little bit. But are you really? Right? So it gets a little muddy when you're like fielding it alone. So having those external voices is really important, for sure.
I struggled with it for a long time, not telling anybody what was going on.
Right.
And it took a long time and a lot of talking to get to a point where I could recognize it and become aware of it. Like even to this day, I'll still have situations where I'm starting to fly off the handle a little bit, and I have to stop and ask myself, why am I so upset about this one little thing? What's going on? And slow my thought process. And it's when you don't recognize those things that are sending you into whatever emotional spiral, up, down, wherever you're going, that's when it becomes harmful. So it's that I think it's the most important. If you can learn to recognize the patterns that cause behaviors within yourself that you don't want to see or just don't desire in your life, that is where you can start to really make a change. Because if you're not aware of it, there's nothing you can do. Until after the effect, and then your hindsight's always 20/20, and you're like, well, I probably should have played that differently, but
no, that makes sense.
That's just my philosophy on it.
It's a good philosophy for sure. We've touched on similar topics before, kind of like responsibility and victimhood, I guess would be the way to put it. Like, there's the point where someone doesn't know what's wrong, but they know something's wrong, in which case, there needs to be room for sympathy and compassion and accommodation. But then there's a point at which you do find out what the issue is, and you're in a position to start addressing it, in which case it becomes your responsibility, and it's no longer that kind of victimhood mentality, where it's like, yes, people need to be considerate and accommodating in situations, but at the end of the day, it's you and your responsibility. Like, it's not the world's responsibility to take care of it. It's not the world should also not be, inhibiting you and discriminating against you, but it can't be the one fixing you. You have to fix you, kind of a thing.
It all comes down to personal responsibility down at the very, very end. As long as you're aware of what's going on. Like, some people have problems, they just psychologically they've got a whole mess going on. But if you've identified an issue in your life that needs work, and you are in a position to make a change, and the only thing stopping you is you, then it's hard for me to feel very bad for people like that, because we've all been through some shit, okay? So we've all had some pretty traumatic events, I'm sure, happen in our lives, and the majority of people, they pick themselves up and they go get the help they need. If you need to talk to somebody, this is 2021. This is not, you're not going to get shamed for it anymore. It is socially acceptable. Go see a therapist, work your shit out, do what you got to do. I guess that's all there is on that. It's very simple to me. Like, it's just it's black and white. I'm Yoda on it. There is no try.
Right. Either you're taking steps to heal yourself, or you're not.
Or you're not. Yeah.
Right.
And if you are, and you're in a journey, and you're actively working on yourself, then my tolerance level goes way, way up. I can deal with a lot more if I know someone's actively trying to become a better person, and they're recognizing these triggers, and I can see the effort in some way. But if it's not there, the sympathy meter gets real low. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I hear you. Cool. Well, we're gonna go completely a different direction at this point.
All right.
Because that's how we roll on this show. Guitar or bass? Which is better?
Guitar. You got 6 strings instead of 4, man.
I guess.
There's more effort.
I guess. I mean, I don't play much of both, so I can't really talk too much, but I can still have a preference.
There's a lot of bassists I just made very upset somewhere, but
okay. Yeah.
I don't know. If you can play the guitar, you can play bass. If I had spent the last 10 years playing nothing but bass, there's no way I could go pick up a 6-string guitar and play like I play now. But I could go pick up a bass guitar because it's just the top 4 strings of my 6-string, and I could go to town on that thing. Okay. I'm pretty sure I could lay down some rhythm and just I could find my way around it. I could be manageable. Right.
Okay. I can kind of see that argument.
I think the skills don't translate over. If you learn 6-string, you can play the other one, and that's time better spent for me.
Yeah, I would say because of the more simplified musicality of bass, there's a lot more demand for expression.
True.
Through the instrument. So there's some certain techniques that only bassists use that can produce sounds guitars can't, in which case the guitars would still have to learn some things to make it happen. But I'm more a bass guy. What can I say? I'm more a bass guy.
When I say that, I don't want to I like bass as well.
Right.
You know, I have a bass. You know, I play around on it sometimes, but I really, really prefer 6-string. Plus, I can't get those screaming solos that I really enjoy on a bass. And I play lead guitar, so
I'm not as much in the screaming guitar camp myself. So that's probably the core difference in preference there. For sure. I was doing the musical Tommy in college. I was music director for that, and I had a really good pit director. So basically the way they split it up is they had the pit director who was my assistant, but really he was in charge of the instrumentalists, and then I was in charge of the whole group of instrumentalists and the singers. So we were kind of isolated in the beginning. I was doing all the singing teaching, he was doing all the instrumental teaching, and then the 2 weeks before when we started doing the joint rehearsals, we were getting everything worked together and everything like that. And it all went really smooth and well. And then the opening night, this motherfucker pulls out a 12-string steel string guitar.
Oh my goodness.
And the fucking guitar solos this guy was cranking out for the interludes of Tommy. It was... He knew what he was doing. He planned that from the beginning. Fucking do it.
That's awesome.
And I'm just sitting there at some points I just stopped conducting. I was like, just do it. Go. You're in charge, clearly.
This is your show now.
This is your show now, boy. Have at it, bud.
Yeah, my love for music came from my family. Deeply rooted in my family.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, piano, my mother, piano and guitar, my father, guitar, 12-string guitars, all kinds of stuff he does. My brother's a drummer. So not to get too much into the religious thing, but we grew up in a heavy church setting, and they were involved in the band.
Yeah.
So, it was just music. So I was bound to latch on to something with all that around me,
Same here. My oldest brother was the organist. My older brother was the percussionist. And I was a little bit of everything, but mostly singing and piano. So.
Oh, nice.
Same sitch for me. Same sitch.
Yeah.
For me. Yeah. It's good stuff. How do you feel? Because music is very mathematical. As much as people try to embrace the artistic side of it, the real creation of music comes from the mathematics of it. Do you feel like because of a musical upbringing that's kind of geared you toward that mechanical, mathematical mindset, or do you think it's the math is already there and the music takes to it?
That's a very interesting question for me, because I have learned very little music theory and I cannot read sheet music. But yet I've played guitar since I was about 18 very seriously the last 10 years, but a little bit since then. And I don't know. I'm not a mathematical person. I was a
Really?
C student in math.
Really?
You know? Yeah,
I'm
I was
mildly
great in
surprised.
everything else, but math was just not my subject. So I really, really embrace the artistical aspect of it. I think that there's a soul to playing an instrument sometimes, that there's something about it that you just can't teach, that the greats have, that there's this love of what they're doing. And I think that shows, absolutely shows in the way that you can play an instrument. So I don't know. I lean more towards that camp. Like, I can play my scales and play along with accompaniment, but if you ask me to play certain chords, I'll stare at you weird.
Gotcha.
But if you play me a beat, I'll play along to it, and you can be like, oh no, go higher with that, and I'll know what I'm doing. So I don't think it's required. I think it's a lot harder. I think I've made way more work for myself than I needed to learning to play this instrument. I think if I just would have taken a little bit of time and learned music theory properly, I would have had a much, much easier path. Because yes, mathematics is absolutely ingrained in pretty much any instrument, not just guitar. I mean, it's there no matter what. And, yeah, I wish I would have learned it, but I don't think it's necessarily required. But just know that you've got a lot more work to do if you don't want to learn the mathematics side of it first, So
yes, that's it's kind of interesting then. So you do still have like a mechanical interest to life, but not necessarily mathematical interest to life. So that doesn't happen too often in my experience.
No, it's rare. People say I play very strangely. They're like, your fingers should be in different spots and you should be doing this, and I'm like, shut up. I know what I'm doing. It sounds
it's good. Working, isn't it?
Yeah, like, just because I didn't take lessons, you leave me alone, all right?
Yeah.
Sounds good. And but yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I noticed the same thing, in somebody who is more properly trained, the way that their hands are placed and in their movements, and it feels more mechanical to me when I watch somebody like that play than it does when I play.
Right.
I've seen myself play. I've recorded videos that I've never uploaded of myself playing, but there's definitely a difference to it. But I feel like there's just sometimes, the soul in it. It's hard to quantify and explain to people. If you don't play an instrument, you're probably not going to know what the hell I'm talking about, but there's just something to it,
Well, all good things. I think we're close enough at this point. Dare I say it, that we approach the midstream mix-up! Yeah! This is I need to make this short. Way too long.
God, cool.
Way too long. I was thinking of loading up some YouTube videos for this, but last time I did that, the whole video got chalked, and Twitch got in trouble too. So we're going to have to err on the side of caution, and we're going to do this more cerebrally than visually.
All right.
But I wanted to demonstrate, because I have TikTok, and I've been trying to figure out how I can start producing TikTok content that will be, a bit more engaging and catching than my YouTube content. Deliberately making it promotional.
Yeah.
Rather than just archival, as how I kind of treat YouTube. And part of that is there's a couple people I follow that react to cooking videos, because there's nothing more gratifying than hearing someone else agree that is not the way you cook that.
Yeah.
All
right.
What are you doing? Are you seeing this? Oh,
Absolutely.
you are seeing this. Good. Okay, so it's not just me. They are they should not be doing that. So that's kind of where it goes. Any video you've seen, I don't know if you do TikTok or not, but any video or even life experience where someone went to approach cooking in a certain way, and you're like, can I do this? or otherwise we're just appalled.
Like a million every day I worked. Because the rotations in kitchens are so high. I mean, there's such a turnover. People get in and think they can do it, and they realize this work is hot, it's long, the kitchen's cramped, you know, and they get out. So, I mean, there's always people coming in just burning stuff. The biggest thing is food safety. Honestly, like seeing those dangers, people just don't know what they're doing with handling food. But and prep.
That'd be an interesting
even
route to
more
go.
than
we could go more like food prep safety rather than cooking atrocities, if you want.
From 8 to 10 years in the kitchen, most of the time people they'll over salt, or like when you're gonna saute, they will take just a ton of olive oil. It's usually in like these bottles, so you can just squeeze a little onto the pan, and they will just sit there and hold the thing, and I'm like, you're not boiling it in oil. What the hell are you doing?
We're not frying, we're sauteing. There's a difference.
Yeah, like, jeez. And people that was the biggest one.
Since you brought it up, olive oil as the default oil. I'm not on board.
No?
I'm not on board. I'm sorry. Vegetable oil.
Do you know why it's preferred though? The science behind it? I
don't know why, because it has a lower smoke point than most other oils, so you can't cook it at a high temperature. It has a very strong flavor, so if it's not going with the dish you're cooking, you're going to be making a weird aftertaste in your food. I don't. Please explain.
It has a ton of antioxidants in it, and it's a clean oil. If in smaller amounts, olive oil is actually good for you and good for your heart and stuff, versus vegetable oil and pretty much most other oils. Peanut oil is not so bad for you.
I'm a big peanut oil fan. But
yeah, peanut oil is a good second choice.
I only use it when the flavor is good. So fortunately,
yeah, once again, peanut oil is it's
fortunately like when I need that much oil, it's going to be for like a stir fry or some other Asian type style cooking. So peanut is usually like right at home right there. So I love doing that.
Yeah.
Or really anything with potatoes. Like I think beef tallow is technically the best fat to cook potatoes in, but peanut oil on potatoes is that is right up there. I think they're actually related, because I think because potato is technically a nightshade, peanut is technically a legume. They're close. They're not as close, but they're close. They're in there. There's a tree there somewhere. But
but yeah, the reason I don't see a ton of mistakes on the actual cooking side is because a lot of times when you take a new cook into the kitchen, at least in a higher end kitchen, they do not start on the grill. They start learning how to fillet and how to work what they're actually going to be cooking, so they understand the product. So you get a lot of people that will be trimming salmon or quartering chicken or what have you, and they're wasting a lot of meat. And, you gotta. That's where the overcorrection comes in. And you know what? It may not sound like a huge deal, like as bad as messing up somebody's steak, but it's actually, for the restaurant industry, decimating. I mean, wasted product like that, it adds up so fast. And when you're
the margins are not good as they are already.
No. So really knowing how to do that, just how to prep your chicken, how to cut steaks properly, and that's the where the most mess ups come into play. So
there's even
honestly, the chefs have less tolerance for that than they do if you were to mess up cooking a steak. If you were to mess up cutting the steak, that's a bigger issue, because it can affect how they have to cut the entire rest of
right. So and there's obviously crossover between butchering and chef cooking, but I think there's also a different approach too, because when butchers get a hold of meat, they're usually going for, like, I think they view the product as the whole animal. So it's, what am I going to get out of this animal, rather than I need a tri-tip. Like, I need it.
Yeah.
I need a perfect tri-tip, right? So like if there's not a perfect tri-tip on there, then maybe they can do a better job with the ribeye and the brisket, and then the tri-tip, we'll just make it ground beef, right? They have those. It's a different approach. So I could see, like, even someone who has like butcher experience coming into a restaurant setting might be like, whoa, that's not how we do that around here, kind of a thing.
Yeah, it is. And it's something that you really only get into when you're talking about working at the higher tiers of cooking. Like you don't see that crap at Applebee's,
right,
or Chili's.
Applebee's, it comes prepackaged in a freezer.
Yeah, you get what you get. But once I stepped into fine dining, I really found a love for cooking there. I hated chain cooking. I did it like everybody does, to make the ends meet. I knew how to do it. The job was available. It was convenient, whatever. But that's where exactly, that was the word I would describe it with all the time when I came home. The soulless cooking. And yeah, fine dining is where I found a passion for it. I very much miss it. Coronavirus really screwed me over on that one. So it was a very small business, but shuttered the doors.
Yeah.
That's how it is. Well, and now there's a million cooks.
As soon as the bounce back kicks in, there'll be a big demand. So you should be able to. There might be a lot of people fighting for it, but I would imagine demand will be higher than supply, because any restaurant that opens up is going to need the same number of people, but some people may just have found something better and they're not going to come back. So I think demand's going to be higher than the supply used to be on the bounce back.
I'm very much looking forward to it. It's going to be fun to get back.
Wish you luck on that.
Thank you.
Well, mystery mix-up successful, I guess.
Sorry, I drug us onto a little tangent there.
Olive oil. That was my trigger. I feel better
olive
now.
Oil. Yeah, packed full of antioxidants. Like I said, you don't want a ton of it, but a little bit of it in the
It's just, for me, it's a very strong flavored oil. Like and even, especially not to. Like any like TV chef, like even like Gordon Ramsay, like they'll use olive oil for like cooking eggs and breakfast. It's like, what?
That triggered the shit out of me. I saw him do that, and
like,
it drove me nuts. I was like, I don't want to argue with Gordon Ramsay, but what the hell are you doing, man?
Well, yeah. Or like someone's making
what are you doing?
They're doing like chorizo tacos and they're using olive oil. It's like, where's your smoked lard? What are you doing? Stop. Yep. That is animal fat, not an olive. Stop.
Yep.
They didn't even have olives in that country when they made that. Stop it.
That triggered me. I can't remember if that was MasterChef or what, but I remember that episode and seeing that, and I lost it. I think it was MasterChef. He was going to make perfect scrambled eggs. He's like, start with the olive oil. No, you don't.
It's like,
no,
I don't want to taste that in my eggs.
I don't taste that either.
So, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, there's a lot of times where you can use olive oil, clearly.
Yeah.
But as a default oil, I'm just like, oh, that's not the go-to. That can't be the go-to. I'm sorry. But yeah. All right. I'm not going to go into it any further. I'm done. We have reached the second half of the show, however, so you are free to take over this show and make it head any direction you'd like.
Let's see.
Adjust my tea real quick. I found a tea shop.
Oh, yeah?
It's actually a spice company. They have everything. They have loose spices. They have their own mixes of spices. They have their own coffee. And they have loose tea. So I spent $50.
$50?
On loose tea.
That must buy a ton of tea.
On loose tea. I went crazy.
Wow.
You're
set for a while.
Yeah.
Let's see. We touched on this a little bit. I've heard some of them, but what other hobbies outside of streaming do you have that you find yourself spending your time on? I know music is obviously something that you try to spend some time on, but is there anything else that you like to get out and do?
Entomology is one I always try to make room for. It's more something that I let come to me. And that kind of expands to like botany and biology overall. So if I'm walking to somewhere or I'm just out in the evening, I'll always have an eye out for that strange plant or animal lurking about. And, either snap a picture or take a sample home or anything like that. There was a period where I had time to actually like preserve insects and create samples and things like that.
I was gonna ask if you had them like pinned and
like I know how to do that. I have all the tools and everything, and it's actually a very interesting process of understanding the insect and its construction and all that stuff, and like what you're displaying and why, right? So the reason why you need to have the bottom edge and top edge of the wings of a butterfly parallel is to compare venations, because the easiest way to tell differences in genuses of butterflies is the vein pattern in the wings. And so by having a default orientation for the wings, where you always know the bottom edge is parallel, you always know the top edge is parallel, then you can look at angles in different spots on the wing and know, like, oh, that's a 45, not a 60. It's a different genus and stuff like that. So it's really interesting, like, figuring out how do you present this insect in a scientific way that also has that general aesthetic as well.
So a quick question on that, because it's just bubbling in curiosity right now. How do you stop the decomposition of these insects? Because I've seen them displayed in cases and they look like they've been there for quite some time, and that they would have just, nature would have taken its course, they would have withered away. What preserves them in such a way that 6 months down the line, you're not looking at a shriveled mess?
All right. Well, they're pretty much preserved.
Really?
So when you look at an insect, you're only looking at its exoskeleton, which is fingernails. So it's just like you have a fingernail clipping in the carpet. It's just going to stay there until you vacuum it up, or maybe they're technically bookworms. It's a type of bookworm, but there's a bookworm that eats chitin. It eats fingernails. It eats insect shells. That's what it eats.
Okay.
So really the only thing threatening a collection are those bookworms.
Interesting. So, I thought maybe you dipped them in something or something.
It's a type of moth. So same thing like with carpet crawlers is a type of moth. All those general pests.
So once they're in textiles. That case, they're pretty set.
Yeah. So as long as it's a tightly sealed case, they're not going to get in. You can put a mothball in the case if you want to have the whole thing perpetually fumigated, which is not the best practice, but it can help in certain situations if you need to protect whatever you're protecting. But really, as long as it's sealed up properly with a tight-fitting lid or actually sealed, nothing in, nothing out, you're not going to have an issue, because it's essentially just really fancy fingernails. So they're not going to break down over time. There would need to be something to break it down. So obviously, if the collection gets too humid, it'll mold. So you always have to protect against that. But that's with anything, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's really all you're protecting against. There are insects that are too soft to pin, and you preserve them in alcohol. And then there's other insects where you can't preserve them in alcohol because of the discoloration or other quality of the insect you want to preserve, in which case there's like weird oils they're like really gooey oils that you can preserve them in, and sometimes they need to be pinned but they're too small to pin, so you have to point them, and there's it's basically like a clear nail polish. So you'll take a small piece of acid-free paper, and it's cut into pretty much those points, like a Google Maps circle dot point.
Mm-hmm.
And you put the pin through the circle part, you bend down the point, you dip the point in the clear nail polish, and then you stick that to the side of the insect. So when you put the pin into the foam, the insect is upright, and it's pinned from the side. But then that's a whole nother process of where do you attach the adhesive to the insect, and how do you position its legs and wings to not be, glued, so that you can still see, like, that gets messy, because again, these are things already too tiny.
They're very,
to
very
pin.
tiny. Yeah.
So now you're trying to like work with a dollop of glue on a piece of paper. You're like, So it gets messy. But yeah, it's all species dependent. So if you want to do it properly, you need to know what you're pinning, and then using that will guide how it should be pinned.
Okay. Well, let's move on here. What was the first video game that you ever played? Do you remember?
I think it was actually, if you remember way back when, before like Game Boys and everything, actually right around when Game Boys started catching on popularity, there were the games that were just a game, right? Like it was just one game, and it came in its own case with a controller and a screen. Because the way it was programmed, because they couldn't create like an LED screen or a digital screen, so it was basically a clock screen. It was a crystal screen, so it had the crystal images already put into the whole screen, and then the game was built to light up those crystals. So the one I had that I remember was one of the Mega Man games. And so
good game.
And it was very clever because it had the default Mega Man character and all the different positions it could be on the screen. And then, it lights up the one that's applicable to wherever you are in the game. And what it did for the enemies is it just had these other little images around it, like a little curved triangle or a halo or a bubble, right? And so the programming of it was really kind of smart because each boss was the same default character, so they could reuse that image on the crystal screen, but it just also had another thing accompanying it to signify which one it was. Like, that's the boomerang one, that's the bubble one, that's the steel saw blade one. So it was actually very clever, like working with the technology they had at that time. It's like it was like right before Game Boy, so we don't have this screen that can just produce anything one pixel at a time. So we're just going to make a crystal screen with the images built in and just very efficiently use all the images so it works like a game anyway.
Yeah.
So it's basically a glorified calculator. That's what it was. So I think that's technically the first video game I ever played. Was a handheld game, Mega Man game. But on computer, it was MS-DOS. So it was all the MS-DOS defaults. So there was the Nibbles, which was the snake game where you eat the blocks and you get longer. There was what essentially is like the Scorched Earth or Tank Wars game, but it was randomly generated skyscrapers and two King Kongs, and they threw explosive bananas at each other. And there was a great hack in that game. So it's easy for a computer to do because all it is just trigonometry. So the computer just has angle, power, curve, and then explode when you hit something. So it was very easy for them to program on a computer. But because the frame rates were so low, if you did max power in a straight line, it would travel a good distance over one frame. So instead, like normally if you did this, you would have to like tunnel your way through a skyscraper. So if the way it's set up is like they both kind of curve down, but there was one big skyscraper in the middle, you would have to like tunnel your way through one explosion at a time through the skyscraper. But if you maxed power in a straight line, it would go for a full frame and then register the explosion. So there would be like these like phantom pixel lines, and you could go like 3 or 4 explosions further into the building because the game was running at such a low frame rate.
Oh man!
So it was even back then, finding ways to like break and otherwise get around the intended mechanics of a game. So yeah. I started young. I started breaking things very early on.
I think I started. My first game was Legend of Zelda.
Nice. On
the 16-bit Nintendo. The original NES.
I didn't get
the classic. No big surprises there,
I had a friend that had SNES, so I didn't get into consoles until SNES, and that was Mario Brothers.
I had an uncle who was away at college, and I went to my grandparents' house, and his Nintendo was there. I called him up. I said, "Hey, you're not using this.
Lucky.
You know, let me borrow it." I was very, very lucky because it just came out not too long before then. All right, let's move on here. If you could live anywhere in the world, money was not a factor, where would you live, and what about it makes you want to choose that place? Anywhere. You're Jeff Bezos in this situation.
Oh, right? Okay. Jeff, if we're going full Jeff Bezos here.
We're going full Bezos here.
All right. My isolation location would be northern Scotland, up in the frosty marshes. So
that's pretty isolated.
I say if I was gonna have like my cabin away from everyone, it would be northern Scotland.
That's up there.
If I had to live in more like a city life to like interact with the world, I'd probably pick somewhere in Japan. I would probably go more. I don't know. I think I would go more southern Japan. How far south is Okinawa?
I am not sure.
Let me get a map of Japan up here real quick. Like I wouldn't want to do Tokyo for sure, but yeah, Osaka's definitely too far north. I think. Yeah, Osaka's like as far north as I would want to be. So Kyoto, Osaka, somewhere in there. I would probably go in that direction.
So what is it about Scotland that would make you pick that? And what is it about Japan that would make you choose that? Is Scotland just the sheer isolation of it, or is it something like about the landscapes that you enjoy, or
part of it's my heritage for sure.
Okay.
But like my favorite time of year is early spring, when things are like just thawing or even still frozen, but nature is starting to pop up anyway. That like defiant return to life. I really enjoy that
from
time
the barrenness that it gets to up there.
Yeah. And so like North Scotland's like it's like that all the time. It's just always that. That, and I would be able to wear as many fancy layers of clothing as possible and never be sweating to death.
This is true.
Which also helps. True. So.
All right. Anything about Japan that makes that jump out? You just always love
just the culture of Japan. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly not perfect.
Very rich.
It has its conservative biases, like any very old nation would have. And they're actually working through that more significantly than expected. They've got a female prime minister, I believe, and a lot of female governesses, mayors. They have like their own title there as how that all works out. But there's some really good progress happening on over there, and it's interesting to see how that's all transpiring while preserving their more cultural things. And it's, there was weirdness in it because like a lot of the censorship and like propriety of Japan actually comes from Western culture. Like traditional Japanese culture was very free and very like human pagan almost. And it wasn't until Western occupation that it kind of got these ideas of always being dressed properly and keeping distance and no inappropriate behavior or conduct in public and censorship and all that stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if Japan ever returns to that as they approach a more progressive society again.
Yeah, that's the one thing I do remember. I've had a lot of military friends who were deployed over in Okinawa and Japan. They've definitely told me their personal bubble is a lot different than Americans' personal bubble. Everybody is very, very, very cramped. And yeah, I think the culture over there is absolutely stunning. Yeah, it's been around for thousands and thousands of years. There's not many places in the world you can go to still see things that are preserved the way they preserve their culture. And, yeah,
so
absolutely. I love history, and it'd be a great place to visit.
And that's kind of like the more permanent places I could see myself living. I would want to spend some time in Italy. I'd want to spend some time in South Korea. I would want to spend some time in Thailand. Some good places I would want to be, but those are two places I could see myself living for longer periods of time.
All right, let's move on. What was your best job that you've ever had and your worst job? And when I say these, I mean not necessarily the ones that you made the most money at, but that you got the most personal satisfaction out of. And it could be like a gig that you only, maybe nothing that was long-term or something.
I mean, I was a really good produce manager. I kicked some serious ass in Colorado as a produce manager. It's just a shame that the company went so corporate, and that's why I left it. It's like I couldn't agree with their practices anymore. So I was probably at my best job. I really kicked ass. The way we did sales was month to month compared to the previous year, same month. So how well you did in March was compared to the previous March, and how well you did in July was compared to the previous July. And my sales were never below 5% up, usually between 10 and 15, sometimes as high as 20. So
damn,
I kicked some major ass. And like it got to the point where I had to set my own store goals, because they put store goals for like the company. And the idea being it needs to be something the tiniest, worst store can achieve, but still just kind of challenges the bigger stores. And it got to the point where like you just need to set your own sales goals. So I would make like quarterly challenges for my department. So each summer we sold tomato plants. So I came from that. I was agricultural retail for a very long time. And was doing that the last 2 years while I was at home. And their previous sales for tomato plants were like barely 600 for the summer. And the previous summer they did about 300 tomato plants. And so I talked to the growers, and I negotiated with the store to let me set up some pallets outside. And I was very anal about making sure everyone kept the types separated. Like, don't let them get mixed. You got to set them up and replenish them type by type so people can find them and like merchandise them and take care of them. And we sold over 700, so it was more than doubled the store's previous best tomato plant sale. And then the next year was like 850, and then the year after that we hit 1,000. So just kicking ass every time. And then peaches was the next quarter, because local Colorado peaches were like a big thing in there. They're not that great, to be honest. Yeah, the East Coast peaches are way better than Colorado peaches. But they like them.
Remember that.
But they like them, so so peaches was just like total pounds. And my first year there, we sold over 10,000 pounds of peaches, and it was always pushing for that next 1,000 every year. So just that kind of thing is like being able to excel beyond what a company can ask of you. So they let you take charge of leading they actually let you lead your team.
Yeah.
Like, clearly you're successful at this, so you do what you need to do to be successful.
I think companies would see a lot more growth if they gave their capable employees a little bit more free reign, because this is a boots on the ground situation here. You're there day in, day out.
Right.
You know what's really
I know
going
the customers.
on.
I know the growers. I'm the middle guy. I know it all.
Some guy who doesn't know what's really going on comes in with a bunch of arbitrary demands, and you're like, dude, if you just let me do my thing here, you're going to get the growth you want anyway. So just go. You know,
Like, it doesn't matter if I sell more bananas than avocados.
You're
I'm
making
hitting the
money.
number. I'm hitting the number you want.
Yep.
So let me do it.
Yep.
So yeah. So that'd probably be the best job. Worst job, I was cleaning houses for a while. That's not great.
Oh, I imagine. I bet you saw some shit.
Like,
some houses.
To be fair, most of it was just like general upkeep. It was like once a week or once a month, depending on the client. There was even a church that we did where we cleaned up the common area, and that was once a week, and it was never that bad. But there was one house that was really bad. It was like a layer of pet hair where the carpet should be. So we had to like get all the hair out before we could even start cleaning. And I got relegated to the kids' bathroom, which was more makeup and soap than it was tile. so it was just trying to get all the stuff off of everything. And kind of in the same way of, building computers, bringing it full circle like we always do. It is that idea of like
satisfaction at the end. Like,
exactly.
This place looks great.
Yeah.
We did that. Look at this. Look at the shithole before.
Yeah. So it did have those moments in it, but it's just not a great job. But that was just kind of the supplement, because I needed a job that was flexible and paid enough for the hours I would give to it. For that, so it was a good fit for the situation, but not a great job.
I think my worst one was roofing, not because of the physical demand, but because I have a crippling fear of heights, and it was just not a good fit. But I needed a job then, and it was available. So I think I made it about a month. And they asked me to carry a big bundle of shingles down this super steep valley, and I had no ropes. I was like, I'm not doing that. So that was my last day.
Yeah.
But it was just terrifying. Every minute for me was pure fear. Mm-hmm. So that's not a good work environment when you're.
I don't really have a fear of heights, but I can be uncomfortable if the roofs are too steep.
I didn't mind
a steep roof
first
makes me very
couple jobs. First couple were like, they were like, you can walk on that, and then we got to the I don't know about this, guys. I don't have any ropes, and you're not giving me any health insurance, so
exactly,
I don't know about doing that.
Yeah.
So all right. Let's see here. Okay, if you could spend an afternoon, a nice 6-hour period with any influential person from any period in time, alive or dead, I'll wave a wand, they're back. You got it for an afternoon. Who would it be, and what would you talk about? What would you want to ask them?
I think we've had a similar question before on the show, and I think my answer was Mark Twain. Because not that I would agree with him much, but I'm fascinated by his philosophical chutzpah. It's like he really has a good analytical mind and a good social commentary, even if he doesn't always come to what I would consider the right solution or conclusion.
Samuel Clemens, right?
Is that his? I forget what his actual name is.
I think his actual name.
Yeah, I forget his actual name, but it sounds familiar. I know Mark Twain is not his actual name. I know that much. But I think that's my answer before. So let's see if there's a different answer we can entertain here. I would be interested, strictly from like a historical curiosity, to like what kind of person Genghis Khan was, right? Because a lot of different...
we'll throw a no killing you clause into this. He won't attack you.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, right?
Right?
But that's the thing, because there's two really interesting narratives that get painted. One is that he's a tyrannical conquering despot that just swept across most of Western Asia unreservedly, which is true. But if you go to a bit more micro of a scale, and you wonder like how someone like that could be so successful. You find out that he had pretty rigorous social rules, not just for his marauders, but also for the places he had conquered. And for a lot of people, they were actually like freed technically under his reign. Like
now he would allow them to join his army and treat them as full citizens and stuff as he conquered and moved through, correct? And the slave population in most of these regions vastly outweighed
exactly
the non-slave population.
There were a lot of regimes that were actually fairly oppressive, especially on gender, and Genghis Khan wasn't, supposedly. Like, women were free to marry and divorce as much as men were, and had first say when it came to children and all this other stuff. And like, there was a lot of kind of progressive for the time social philosophy that
for the time
Genghis Khan had, and compared to the people he was conquering, it was actually liberating. So it'd be interesting to see.
I mean, when it's a step up for you when he's sweeping through, you know,
right,
I mean,
right.
It's all about perspective.
Nowadays, it's like, yeah, he killed half the town, but I hated those people anyway. And you know, I actually have a pretty good gig now. This isn't the worst. I could go to bat for this guy. Like,
yeah.
So that, like I said, it's not that like I have respect for him. It's more very curious, like what actually went on there. Like,
yeah.
Because I could very easily see someone who takes a look at the world and the world around them and says, everyone's oppressed and this is horrible. We need to have like from a revolutionary perspective, like he's just going around overthrowing governments. Like, right?
Yeah.
So
I think if I had to take a historical standpoint on that, I would probably do Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
He would be one that I would be just, I just million questions. Oh yeah. You know, just tell me everything, you know, because another person at his point in time had conquered the majority of the known world. And, you know, yeah, always been fascinated with like that period in time, ancient Greece, ancient Rome.
Yeah.
Super interesting stuff. All right. Get a little. What did you want to be when you grew up?
There were a lot of things I wanted to be. I wanted to be a tornado chaser. I wanted to be a performer. I wanted to be an entomologist. I wanted to be kind of like a designer architect. I had a really big interest in architecture for a while. And my oldest brother had the same thing. He would like, you know, give us a piece of graph paper and we'll go crazy. Like that was the best thing you'd give any of us. Would be like that's the Christmas present we under the tree. We want the 2x4,
the big
100 sheet count pile of graph paper. That's what we want. And he would like design churches and everything on the graph paper, and I would do like weird castles and houses and things. So I always had a curiosity in designing stuff, and it wasn't like even just houses. Like for a good period, I think it was like for a whole year in high school, during lunch I would design like missiles, like actual missiles, and I would do like rudimentary calculations, like, you know, how much fuel could the missile carry, how long could it go, how heavy it was, stuff like that. So like, you know, just give me a great piece of graph paper and let me like work stuff out on stuff. So really like a designer of anything I'd be interested in. Anything that involved graph paper.
All right.
There was a good smear, and that was like kind of the challenge, again, going back to the general specialist thing.
Yeah.
Like going into college. Also, I love how the green screen is making SpongeBob just more yellow. Like,
yeah, it's pretty yellow.
But that was kind of the trouble going to college. Is like all these things I wanted to do. It's like, well, you got to pick one. It's like, that one? I don't know.
All right. I've got a lot of questions for you. I'm gonna start rapid firing,
Hey,
Matt.
do what you want to do. It's your half hour.
I overachieved. I made a lot. As someone that strikes me as a really logical person, you strike me as somebody who likes to think things through and get to the meaning of them. Have you ever experienced any paranormal activity you cannot explain, or do you believe that the possibility is there?
This is a good question to ask me, actually, because I've been known to dabble in the energetic. To say spiritual would either go too far or color you in the wrong direction. But energetic for sure. And my philosophy is that there is the material realm and there's the cognizant realm. And I would argue that the cognizant realm does not exist materially, but rather is connected to the physical realm via energy. So I would say there is the material realm, there's the energetic realm, and then what you could say is spiritual or soul or cognizant, whatever.
Okay.
And so how I construct that, like if we were to go a bit more religious in the description, is that the soul is unique, the spirit is not. So the spirit exists materially in that it is energy, but the soul does not exist materially. It is immaterial. And so the soul will use a spirit to connect itself into the physical world. And this entertains a couple notions. So when you have things like past life readings, which for the most are bullshit, but
I can agree with you there.
There are sentiments like old souls or things that you have inexplicable affinities to, or things from history you just really take to and identify with, even though you have nothing in common with it. And I feel like there could be possibility that there are these spirits that have harbored many souls over the millennia. And much like with anything else, there's these imprints left behind. It's not a lot. It's mostly lost over time with, chaos theory and the infinite exponential growth of possibility with every choice that's made every day.
Yeah.
But there's still residue there energetically. And that can be tapped into to some degree with reflection, meditation, concentration, whatever your approach may be.
So have you had any experiences to...
I have had energetic experiences, both given and received, that I would say go beyond coincidence.
Okay.
So there's actually some... Usually when you get to meet... When two energetically minded people meet, they have ways they like to share, like how they've constructed their energetic body with each other, like little demonstrations or whatever. And the particular demonstrations I use almost always get the same exact response back as to what the person experienced. So they always describe it in the same way, using the same words, same adjectives, which seems to go beyond anything like confirmation bias or coincidence or things like that. I would also say that a large part of it could very well be subconscious or otherwise microexpression detection. The non-cognizant ability for the brain to pick up on things and interpret them properly. And my response to that critique would be, well, what's the difference? Right? If it's happening on a level that is unconscious, why does it matter if it's energy or whatever? It's still a signal in the brain. It's still electric at its core when it reaches your thoughts. So what's the difference? So,
I myself am firmly in the camp that something's going on. I wasn't for a very, very long time. The last place I lived before here, I lived there about 7 years. Mm-hmm. And there's more activity there that I saw that I could shake a stick at. I mean, doors would open and close, faucets would turn on and off, things would move across the table in front of me. I had multiple people over, like my wife, myself, and another guest, and we all heard the same audible voice in a room. Like, we've had some crazy stuff. I never saw anything full-blown appear in front of me, but weird shit. I ran out the front door a couple times. All right, that's all I gotta say. It scared me a little bit sometimes. So something's going on. I don't know what. I don't know how to quantify it, but I believe it requires further investigation. This field of study is not concluded yet.
Yeah, and that's something I always get kind of dejected about, is they'll always try to use something that's not meant to detect spirituality for detecting spirituality.
Yeah.
And it's like you're just discrediting the whole concept. The whole point being it's operating on a level we are not familiar with. So we need to be testing levels that are not, like, either it's a form of energy that we aren't currently measuring and need to figure out how, or it's in a very particular band of wavelengths that needs to be identified.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's like, and for me too, also, I guess in a bit contrast to what you described, is I would hold less import on those events than I would an experience between me and someone else in a energetic exchange of sorts. Because I could dismiss physical phenomena, like maybe there's a raccoon in the cabinet, you know, maybe there was a gust of wind, right?
We tried to do that a lot, yeah.
Right? But when it's two people, it's a lot harder to blame an external source on.
Yeah, those were the ones that made me really open my. Anytime something happened alone, I would try to just tell myself, you know,
right,
get over it. It's nothing. But the events that happened with me and like the wife present and me and company present, those were the ones that were like, did you see? Yeah, you did. Oh shit. Okay. You know.
Yeah.
So that happened. You know, like all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but yeah, they'll shake you up a little bit.
And that's something Bax and I have gone back and forth on a lot. And in the true fashion, Bax and I 100% agree with each other. We have the complete opposite conclusion based on what we agree with. So we both completely agree that there is virtually no evidence or understanding of it at the present day. And my conclusion is that means we can't rule it out. And his conclusion is that means it doesn't exist. But we both agree. That there's nowhere near enough evidence to know anything about it.
And it's hard to trust any evidence that does come up in today's day and age with technology. Unless you're there and you experience it firsthand, you're always going to be quite skeptical of whatever you see nowadays.
And that's kind of what I'm saying, is like a video camera is not the tool to measure an event.
No.
An EMF reader is not the tool to read the event. Whatever it's operating on is not, you would need a specific device to measure that. And until we develop something like that, there's not really going to be ever any satisfactory proof of any kind.
Well, let's pivot. We don't have too much time left. Just a little segue. How would you define living a good life versus living a successful life? Or are they one and the same to you?
Okay.
This is a deep one. We're diving deep here.
There's a lot of definitions we need to
establish. Just to you
right.
Personally. Yeah.
We have to establish a lot of definitions for this. So, definition 1, a good life, by my most objective, generalized definition I could muster for that. My philosophy being that there have only been about 90 billion human brains in existence, and even lesser than that have ever been aware of the existence of the universe, and even fewer of that to understand the breadth and complexity of the universe, the infinity of the universe, as some currently have now. So to say, let's say there's only maybe 1 billion human brains that are aware of the universe as close to as possible in its infinite size and variety as it currently exists. 1 billion in the universe is an incredibly tiny number.
Yeah.
And the size of a human brain is an incredibly tiny size in the universe. So the human brain, both by rarity and size, is incredibly rare for the universe. And as far as we know, it is the only instance of the universe being aware of itself. So we are arguably the consciousness of the universe. So very small, very rare, and very important. And to use up a human mind solely to make that human mind's life better at the expense of everything around it is a mortal sin, in my opinion. That is the ultimate sin. And I would say a life should be lived making as many other human minds better as possible.
To maximize your potential as a human. Okay.
Well, not even maximize your potential as a human.
I mean,
to be a benefit.
In the sense that you're helping everybody.
To be a benefit to as many other human minds as is possible.
Like the saying, the world grows better when old men plant trees they won't sit in the shade of. That kind of
exactly.
philosophy.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay.
So I would say a good life is a life spent making more than just your own mind's life better, which is easy to do, ironically, as much as it doesn't happen. But that can get a bit more philosophical and psychological as well. Because when people say, well, I take care of my family, it's like, yes, but what is your family but a possession of yours, a continuation of yours, right? That's your biological need to continue your genetic lineage is self-serving. So while it is important to take care of your family, arguably the decisions you make to do that could be interpreted as self-serving.
Because it's not acting purely out of there's still self-interest
right.
involved.
The core is to improve your human brain and to ensure its genetic lineage, rather than sacrificing some of your resources to benefit other human minds that you do not benefit from directly. So like I said, if we go most objective, most universal, it would be just to live an existence that benefits other human minds than your own. But I would put that to much greater stipulation and skepticism to actually deem whether it was good or not by really sussing out what was self-serving or even just biologically programmed versus what was actual decision of sacrifice to benefit others.
Yeah.
So as easy as it is to do, quite often not often done, because of how well disguised we can make self-serving interests.
Yeah, it's very easy sometimes to veil something for yourself and as a nice act for somebody else. Ulterior motives sometimes.
To get a little buzz topic parallel going on, like mask wearing, right? It's like you can pretend that you're fighting mandates to wear masks because you're standing up for everyone's freedom. But it's a self-serving interest of not being restrained yourself, because mask wearing is about protecting others, not yourself.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. That's a perfect example of it. Yeah.
So it's like you could argue that you're well-meaning, trying to do the right thing, fighting for your rights and everyone's rights, but it comes from a place of selfishness, whether or not you are doing a good thing or not.
Yeah.
So that would be a good life. What was the other half of the question? Successful.
A successful life, which I think is it's easier to define.
Well, I think successful comes down to more personal. So I think in this framework, the way you worded the question, is a good life is the measure of your life objectively in humankind, whereas a successful life is a measure of your life from your perspective, the subjective evaluation of your life. So I don't think anyone could ever say whether or not someone was successful in their life, because only that person truly knows what they sought out to do and what they felt their place in the world was. They may have tried to communicate what they thought their place in the world was. They may have said whether or not they felt like they were successful in the world, but technically that's all hearsay. They're the only ones that will ever actually know the answer to that question. So I think a success would be a measure of the self, where good would be an objective measure of the impact overall. So that's how I would define those things. And then because of that definition, they are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And therefore, they're as different or as same as you want them to be.
Right on. That's a good answer. Really good. All right.
How about you? What's your parameters of good and successful?
They line up pretty close to what you described. Though I probably would have interpreted the successful more in a financial aspect of it. Like, did you achieve the career goals and stuff that you set out to do? Did you get the house you wanted? Did you get all that stuff? And then is it possible for you to have those things? Is it possible for you to get all those financial and career advancements that you wanted, and at the same time be able to live a good and selfless life? Like, are those can you get everything you want for and still be a good person? Will it corrupt you, or is that balance innately I think it's human nature that the selfishness takes over overall as a
that's more in line with the power corrupting and absolute power corrupting absolutely.
I think they are exclusive. I think it really is a pick one or the other for most people. Not that there's never been a rich selfless person in the world, but I think that
I think Bill Gates does a very good job.
He does a good job.
I'll color this a little bit to try to challenge your biases, as they were. I think that viewpoint comes from a very capitalist upbringing.
I grew up pretty capitalist.
Right. So
I can't argue that.
So the success via resource gathering, as it were, and weighing between gathering resources for yourself and gathering resources for others is very capitalist. And I would imagine a lot of other societies that are not capitalist don't have that problem of conflicting interests.
Yeah.
I think it would be very unified for a lot of them that acquiring resources for the whole is the success.
Well, that would be the idea.
Right.
And perfect, that's hopefully how it would run everywhere,
Right.
But.
So I would say I think a part of that does come from a bias of a capitalist upbringing.
Yeah.
To kind of see a conflict in success and good. And if nothing else, at least highlights a very problematic aspect of capitalism, that there even has to be that distinction with that philosophy. Like, why is success and good at odds with each other in this capitalist system? Why that means it's not a good system.
I can't argue
with
that.
Like, if not being a good person rewards success, how good is the system that's rewarding this behavior? Like, come on now. So, not to say capitalism is the problem, but you have to be aware of every system has flaws, and you have to be aware of each system's flaws. And capitalism's flaw is just as you said. the self-interest versus the interest of the global good.
Common good, yeah.
That's the problem.
I think we got time for one or two more questions here.
Sure.
If you had power, solve one and only one problem in this world, what would it be and why? Yeah, you got to pick one.
I think it would be like, I'm going to say poverty, but I'm going to explain what I mean by that.
Oh, if you say poverty, I got to know how you like.
Right. Okay. So that's what
Okay,
I'm going to define what I mean by solving
this
poverty. Okay. I'm a firm believer in economic systems that embrace the natural flow of change. It's very weird to me when people in this country say we need industrial jobs back to stimulate the economy. Because every culture in every historical record that we have, every civilization has done the same thing. It's hunter-gathering, agriculture, market, export, industry, service, and then intellectual capital. Mm-hmm. It's the same every time. It has always been done that way and only ever goes that way. And you're fighting in the wrong direction. The reason you go from farming to market is because you get so good at farming you have surplus, so now you need a market. And then the reason you go from market to export is you're so good at marketing you still have excess, and now you have to give it to other civilizations. And then the reason you go from export to industry is because you have so much to export now, you need a system to like refine and efficientize the process. And then the reason you go from industry to service is because with industry you establish a financial hierarchy. There are people doing the work and people who own the workers, essentially. Not to say that's the best system, but that's what happens. It's just what happens. And so that creates a hierarchy, which means there are differences in quality of life, and that means you can have people that provide services for the higher qualities of life, living at the lower quality of life. And then from there, you get intellectual capital, because then you get so good at the social that you're actually able to start producing service as an actual good. Like you're so good at massages, you can have a massage parlor. You're so good at creating music that you can be a musician. And then that turns into intellectual capital. And had America just fucking embraced it, we would be in an intellectual capital economy right now. But we're still in this like pseudo service, almost intellectual capital economy, pushing towards back to industry. And it's like, you're going the wrong way. And people be like, well, look at China. China's industrial and they're doing so much better. It's like, yes, their industrial revolution happened 100 years after ours. They're 100 years behind us. That's why they're doing well. They're
building ghost towns anyway. They're not really building shit.
It's like that's what they're doing well for where they're at in their civilizational stage, but they're 100 years behind us. Like we already did that. We're moving forward. To go backwards would be suicidal. So the idea of an intellectual capital is that you can't use the same currency system for a market that you can for social services. That's why the gold standard was eliminated. That's why stocks were created. There was no way to represent with physical goods, with any reliability, the value of a service, right?
Yeah.
How many chickens is my massage worth? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So the problem why we haven't jumped from the social to the intellectual capital is because it requires another currency change. And we're still not, half the people still aren't on board with getting rid of the gold standard.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrency, thankfully, is like kind of being like, no, actually, look, it works. Like,
yeah, thank goodness.
Right?
I'm glad it stuck around. I'm really glad crypto didn't fail.
Yeah. So it's like, oh no, by the way, the general consensus is what dictates the market. Like, as long as everyone agrees, everyone agrees. So that's the step in the right direction. But then what that needs to allow to do is essentially you need to make your own cryptocurrency for society, which gets into the realm of like annual salary, like having a system in place where people are given monthly or annually a cost of living to provide for them, so that on top of that they may produce whatever they want to produce. Through taxation, you're always guaranteed to recoup that money, because let's say you give someone $1,000 and they only spend it on rent and food, and the people they're renting from do the same thing, and the people they buy food from do the same thing, then all that money bounces back between those three people until it's been taxed back to zero. So the only loss of money comes from exportation, which is why you tax exportation. Well, what are you exporting in this situation? You're exporting intellectual capital. So you can turn that loss of intellectual capital into profit by building your economy around it. So now you're selling the intellectual capital, which turns your loss of that cycling money into a gain from external sources. So by providing a cost of living for everyone, and then they can use that to have a life, which then they are in a better position to produce whatever intellectual or service capital they would like, they can do.
It's very difficult to bring yourself up and better yourself when every resource you have that you're bringing in anyway is going towards it's just all utilities and rent, and you have no extra money. You can't do anything.
Welcome to
you
my
can't
life.
afford
Welcome
you can't
to my
afford
life.
College. You can't afford to take tech.
I have no
school
family,
classes or
no
anything,
car, literally just rent and food, and be damned if I can actually save up some actual money.
Yeah, that would be a good way to tackle it. You know, the sad thing is that it wouldn't be that difficult for the United States government, at least, to do that. But that's a whole nother conversation about why they're not gonna. But yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Right.
It's tough.
It is. It is tough.
So that's what I mean by like ending poverty.
Yeah.
Is that you could very easily create a productive system that makes sure everyone has whatever your cost of living agreed upon is. Obviously, it would have to be democratically decided what is a cost of living and what can the country actually afford to provide. But to think that number is zero is ludicrous.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Another question. We got time for one more.
Let's bring it home. Let's get the magic question where I take everything we've talked about over the last 2 hours and thread it into one ridiculous idea.
I could do that. It'd be a very weird question.
Try it. It wouldn't have to. It could be a simple question. I'll make it happen. That's what I do around here.
You know, we've touched on space like a few times now, and chaos theory and some other things here. So let's just get the big one out there. The universe is infinitesimal, as far as we know, ever expanding, and we've already discovered thousands of planets that could potentially harbor life. You see where this is going?
I'm ready.
UFOs, man.
I'm ready.
Are they? Do you believe?
Do I believe?
Do you think that we have been visited by one of these? All the evidence. Do you think the millions of videos that not one of them?
I don't think we have any evidence.
No evidence.
I don't think we have any evidence.
It's all bullshit. You don't believe any of the videos.
Three wonderful things that I'm going to crush all your dreams with.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, number one, you show any of those videos to a professional digital or even manual photography editor, and they know what all of it is. Those triangles is actually just an out of focus lens with a triangular lens cap in the lens. And that's why you see 3 of them, is because it's been reflected 3 times. So it looks like they're all moving in synchronous. But it's just a plane moving normally, but you have it out of focus. And because of the way your physical camera captures light, it looks like that. And, immediately that eliminates any video that's been tampered or edited, because they can detect all of that. So that's like 90% of your evidence right there. And then anything else that's like genuinely recorded is usually just a phenomena of the material it was recorded with.
Okay.
So, or it's just something simple like, no, when a cloud goes over a mountain, it turns into a perfect dome. And because of the way the sun sets, it can look like it's night, but the sun is still hitting the top of the mountain. And you see this rainbow of lights in a halo above the mountain, because that's how the atmosphere works. Congratulations. Right? Like, so I would say there's no evidence, and talk to any professional video or photography editor to help you along those lines. Number 2, and this is the one that will destroy your dreams.
All right.
Okay. Imagine a civilization of beings so advanced that they are capable of interstellar travel. Let's rule out intergalactic travel. Let's keep it within this galaxy. Interstellar travel. That means they are able to produce self-sustaining systems to ferry their life forms from wherever they are, closest being 4 light years away, to us in a time sufficient to make that happen. So this is a civilization advanced enough to travel between stars. And for those of you who don't know what traveling between stars means, we're very cozy. We have a magnetosphere protecting us from the sun, and we have a sun protecting us from the cosmic radiation of the universe. The moment you leave the magnetosphere of Earth, you are in trouble. This is why up until recently, we had the longest anyone's ever been in space was up to a year. Like, that was the one experiment, is the twins that 1 year spent on Earth, 1 year spent on the space station. The reason is because once you're out of that protective layer, you are in trouble. And once you leave the protective bubble of the sun, you're in even more trouble. Even more trouble. And that's not to also consider the fact that once you're beyond that realm, there's not enough energy from the sun to be harvested. So if you need any materials to repair or otherwise update your construction, that needs to somehow be collected by things whizzing past you at ungodly speeds in random directions that are probably so small you can't see them until it's too late anyway. Right? So anything that could make that travel with living things on board. Like, it'd be very easy to, we've already done it, right? We've sent out Voyager. We can send out a hunk of metal that can, just go and do something. But to ferry a life form through all of that between stars, and then to think our dysfunctional governments that are at war with each other and want to see each other fail could somehow coordinate in a way to thwart the will of that species. It does not make, how could any government we have on Earth successfully choose whether or not aliens made themselves known to us? If that civilization is capable of getting here, they are in charge 100% as to whether or not we know that they're visiting. They're not going to ask for permission. They're not going to be covered up. Very simply, whatever they want to do, they're going to be able to do, and we're not going to have a say in it. So if they wanted us to know that they were there, we would know. And if they never wanted us to know that they were here, we would never know. It's really that simple.
All right. I don't know. I believe that any civilization obviously is going to be super super advanced, so they could have understanding of things that we don't, how to properly manipulate dark matter, what the hell it is. They could have ways to travel that are faster than the speed of light. We don't know.
Correct.
And I don't know. I just think there's so many reports, especially from like military units. I've got things flying alongside me. I don't know what the hell these are. It's just so from different governments all over the world. I don't know. I don't think they're really trying to hide it. I think they've let the public get so used to the idea that they could be there that by the time they're finally like, yeah, we really have been coming here, humans will just be like, yeah, we kind of knew already. We saw this one coming. There's some spoilers out there.
I don't think that's how that much elevated of a civilization would conduct itself, though. You wouldn't travel all that way just to very casually make yourself known or not known. Like you would have a reason, you have an intention, right?
This is true.
So the third thing, I didn't even get to the third thing. And since you kind of tackled it with like military making reports, and that's because two things. One, military is allowed to look at things that no one else is allowed to look at. So yeah, you're going to see some weird shit. You're going to see aircrafts that have never flown before. You're going to see things on radars that have never been on radars before, because you're actually allowed to look at things that are being developed and being tested. If you look at statistical reports, the interesting phenomena is that astronomers and meteorologists report fewer UFOs than other professions, even though they spend more time looking at the sky.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's because they know what they're looking at. Like statistically, you would think if UFOs were real, then the people who spend more time looking at the sky would have more UFO reports, but they actually have fewer UFO reports because they know what's not a UFO.
So do you believe that there... Just a quick follow-up question here. It's part of the first part.
Yeah.
Do you believe that there, in all of this cosmos, that we are the only planet that's developed intelligent life like this? I mean, I believe there's got to be some out there. Even if they're not advanced enough to get here, there has to be another planet like this. I mean, maybe I'm sure they look different, but they're something. There's got to be, right? It's just a mathematical numbers game.
And difference the problem, because even just in that definition, intelligent life, right? That's what is life and what is intelligent. You look on Earth, we have plants that are conscious beings. The problem is they have a chemical consciousness, not an electronic consciousness like we do.
I would define it with a brain, something with a brain,
right?
An actual,
but that's the problem. So
mammalic life,
right? But so plants have memory systems that are chemically based. They can detect the direction of gravity chemically. They have ability to detect the direction of light chemically. They have an ability to detect damage and pain and to communicate with each other, all chemically based. So even though they don't have a electric consciousness like we do, they still have a chemical consciousness and are still a life form and an intelligent life form. And that's just on this planet having all evolved from the same genetic material. So you get genetic material on any other planet with other conditions and other surpluses and deficits in other molecules. Who knows what that's going to look like? It could be a crystal-based life form. It could be a gaseous-based life form. It could be a liquid-based life form. Like, we have no idea what to even look for as far as the definition goes. But what we do know that we can look for is probably DNA. If you look at the most popular elements, the most popular atoms in life, it's hydrogen, iron, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen. If you look at the most popular atoms in the universe, it's hydrogen, helium, iron, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen. It's a 1-for-1, with the exception of helium, because helium's inert gas. But it's literally 1-for-1. So it would seem very much like chance that the most common elements in the universe have constructed life and are the most common elements in the DNA of life. So considering life can erupt from the most common elements, and the most common elements are everywhere, that's why they're the most common, it would be ludicrous to think DNA could not develop on other planets. But it would be nothing like our DNA. It might not even be DNA. It could be an entirely different system of putting amino acids together. So, yeah.
Well, that was good.
So, I'm sure it's out there, but we probably wouldn't even recognize it if we saw it. We'd think it was a cloud, or it was an ocean, or it was a crystal, or we wouldn't even think of it as life until we actually got down to interact with it.
I don't know if that'll happen in our lifetime.
In our lifetime, very likely not.
Yeah.
Unless they are coming to us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. All good questions. I could have tied that in to, good and bad, and, should we even contact aliens? Is it morally right or wrong to take those risks of crossing societies and crossing biologies and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
How does an economy work between two civilizations from different planets? We could have. I could have gone down all the rabbit holes on that one. That was a good one to end on.
Oh yeah.
And we do have plenty of time for rabbit holes, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to end the show for now on the YouTube portion, but we're going to continue. So if you like what we're talking about, you should have been here live, because we're gonna keep talking about it in the Q&A. So chat already has questions. So we're going to be getting to them, and as long as Aries doesn't have any emergencies immediately to tend to, we're going to
good for a little bit
entertain those. So we'll take a quick break, but we will be back for the Q&A section. Aries, it's been a delightful chat. Really glad I got to know you. This is fantastic.
Great time, man.
This is what this show's all about. Good stuff. So thank you very much. Anything you'd like to promote that you have coming up?
Not really.
In the Twitchiverse.
Really. Gonna be doing New World when that drops. So
all right,
looking forward to that. And yeah.
Cool. Well, thank
you
again.
Me around for some marbles here and there.
Thank you again. It's been delightful, and we'll see you next time. Yeah.